Well, welcome everyone to the first ever restart, reboot, whatever you want to call it, of Free the Bear podcast. Now the more official voice of the California National Party. I'm Sean Forbes. I'm chair of the California National Party. And I'm joined here with Theo Slater, our external communications director and also former chair of the party. So what we're doing here is basically trying to amplify and basically explain what our policies are for the California National Party and why we believe in California independence. And we're going to be talking through this program about various different subjects over the course of this program's life, talking about basically the planks of the party platform, such as the environment, civil rights, law enforcement, gun rights, etc. We'll go into more depth about these subjects. But for right now, we're going to be asking ourselves in the first episode the $64,000 question, which is, why do we even want independence in the first place? And Theo, I'm just going to point my finger metaphorically at you. Why do you want it? Because you started this party, sir.
Sure. Yes. Well, yeah, I've been thinking about this for some time. I think I would say two primary elements. One is that I'm just sick and tired of paying for the American war machine to rampage across the world, causing destruction, woe, and harm everywhere it sets its blood-stained boot. So, I'm talking about Afghanistan, I'm talking about Iraq, I'm talking about South America, I'm talking about various colonial misadventures in Africa. I mean, America has yet to find a war it didn't want to provide both sides with weapons to, and then spend trillions or billions crushing whichever side is less inclined towards its interests. It's a global empire and it runs on oil and blood, and I want to stop paying for that. So that was a really big part of it, was just, what piece could we remove from this puzzle? I, as a chosen Californian, and I mean someone who chose to live here, where this is my chosen place, my chosen country, what could I do to try and slow down this machine? That was kind of the first reason. And then the second reason is just, why should we be wedded to this horrible, racist police state, this place where Black men get murdered by the police on a regular basis, this place where, especially in the U.S. South, you've got a apartheid society that our tax dollars prop up. And it's not even just the South. Obviously, America has a racism problem that it has since 1776, and even written into the U.S. Constitution are profoundly racist things.
Since you said 1776, right? Right. And you could talk about warfare and empire building and things like that. The United States has only been at peace for 17 years throughout its entire existence.
Isn't that amazing?
Again, even if you think about outside threats or whatever, that is a hell of a lot of not peaceful years there.
It makes the Romans look like Quakers.
Well, again, we were based on the Roman Republic, and I think we're just making that final metamorphosis to the Roman Empire, or the new American Empire, excuse me.
Yeah, I think so. Pax Americana.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what you just said, to be honest, is like pretty much that amplifies what I have thought too. I think maybe one of the things that really kind of stood out in my mind, besides what you just said, which is all very valid and true and something I thought about as well, I think this is that there's no chance for reform under the current system. The current American system is built on delaying reform until the last possible second, until there's basically riots in the street. You cannot really have a fair healthcare system. You can't have a fair law enforcement system. It has to basically, almost be at the breaking point. And even then, we just get kind of this tiny little pieces of change.
Right. And the current system, and America by design, and America since its founding, has always been about enriching and empowering a tiny percentage of extremely rich, mostly white dudes, so that they can control everyone else. And it has not fundamentally changed, and it never will. It is a racially class stratified patriarchy that oppresses everyone within its borders and outside of them for the maximum profit of a tiny, narrow percentage of rich dudes.
Well, I mean, and that was kind of, that's built into the DNA of the constitutional framework. It was about making sure that a localized aristocracy, which was free from, the rights of birth or whatever, like in England, but it was still based on wealth and based on the making sure that the economic system that benefited just a few was operating smoothly. And right now, I think that in the 21st century, to have a 18th century constitution is abhorrent at this point. I also think that when California has the same population as Canada, we only have like 2 senators in the United States Senate. And at the same time, too, we're always going to be victimized by the Electoral College, which is built into the framework, where we can provide all the votes for a different candidate. But again, because of localized, certain states, these red states, they can actually band together and give us a Trump. I mean, what is it that Michael Loebs, who ran for governor for our party, he talked about that if you took away California from the, the arithmetic of the 2016 election, pretty much America would have voted for Trump and he would have won the popular vote. California was the only thing popular vote-wise to give a wedge against Trumpism. Because otherwise, the rest of the country is actually pretty much for Trumpism. If you took away our voices and had the rest of the country vote, he would actually have won. There would have been a need for Electoral College.
Yeah, and Loebs was a fantastic voice for the California National Party, and he did very good work. I think that he did a great job there highlighting the issue of California and the United States are profoundly different countries. And they always have been, and they always will be. California was essentially, modern California was brought about by the confluence of 3 communities plus a 4th community that was ruthlessly oppressed. And those 3 communities were the Chinese California community, the Latino community, and the Anglo community. And then, of course, the indigenous California community, which was treated so badly by especially the Anglos, but most of the other 2 also, to a lesser degree. But I mean, I think the real issue is like California is a confluence of cultures. You don't have the hegemonic, patriarchal, white power of America in all its fury and destruction in California. California has always been a conversation between at least 4 communities, and then that expanded out into ever more communities over time. So that at this point, when you say, what does a Californian look like? It is literally anyone from anywhere in the world. California is a conversation. California is a conversation between countless communities, and we build the future. We invent the future because we have the thoughts and the brilliance and the genius of every kind of person from everywhere in the world. And the problem with our American friends is they want to close those doors and they want to keep those people out, and they want to pretend like they can go back to 1950 and the world will just let them stay in charge. And nothing about that is accurate. But the worst part about it is that they're just racist and xenophobic. And we built our entire country. That's what California is. California is come here and build your dreams with us. Come here and help us build dreams.
Well, before there was even an American dream, that quoted phrase, there was the California dream. And again, there was also, we should be talking about that a lot of the innovations and a lot of things that have made America become the superpower that it is have come out of California. The aeronautic industry, it's Silicon Valley, it's Hollywood, it's just the sheer mineral resources of the state itself. So again, California is providing a real big cover for basically would be a country that if you took California out of the United States would not be very functional and probably even closer to its collapse than it is right now. Because so much of the states that are red are economic basket cases that are being floated by the federal government, which is, you should read it as floated by California dollars. At the same time, too, California is a true, like you said, again, a cosmopolitan multicultural republic, and it has tried to embrace at least the cultural revolution of the 1960s to the point of actually acceptance, inclusiveness towards marginalized communities. Well, I think that the rest of the United States the rest of the United States is kind of more focused on the counter-revolution against the 1960s, where they want to destroy voting rights. They want to roll back and put people back into the closet. They want to make sure, again, that certain books and ideas are, verboten. So California is the last kind of like thing, making sure that cultural life and economic life doesn't collapse across the United States. But the problem is that by being that kind of dam against the flood, but the flood is becoming so egregious and so working away that we can't keep back the forces of the counter-revolution. We can't keep back the people who want to set fire to the late 20th century.
The way that I like to say it is no one can save America, not even California. All right. Because they are so committed to turning backwards. I mean, I think what we're really seeing is like the backlash against, like, America was an apartheid society, like clearly and obviously an apartheid society until the Civil Rights Movement. I mean, the South in particular, but generally, I mean, the apartheid monsters in South Africa literally got their playbook from the American South. Hitler was inspired by the American process of murdering the Native Americans. So, we really inspired the worst monsters in the world, or America did, when we try to leap forward, which the Civil Rights Movement was, which, the feminist revolution, various other positive things have occurred, the Stonewall riots that led to a freedom that helped move the world towards freedom. I mean, it's not only a bad narrative, but we've got this counter force, this stupid, ignorant, hateful, racist, abusive, violent force that rules all the red states with an iron fist.
I think that what we had to grapple with reality-wise is that what you see in the red states and what you see with the Republican Party, that is America. That, again, when we always talk about, like, the progress this country has done about race or workers' rights or anything, that's really only happened in, like, the last, like, maybe about 70, 80 years. But for the rest of the Republic's history, that was never the case. And now, really, we're getting back to the original structure. And that's the problem. California can't go back to that structure. California cannot be part of that structure anymore.
And we won't go back, no matter what.
Exactly. And if people want to think about the good things about America, about, like, what America has done in, like, the last few decades that has, had any sort of progress for its citizenry, it really, that's not really the case anymore. That is, again, that's a aberration when it comes to the political experience in America. We have these blips where, again, it looks like we're trying to do something better. We have done something better. There is some kind of progress. But really, again, it's just the werewolf is coming back out, and it's not going to go away for a long time again.
Yeah, I think you've got two periods of dramatic social improvement. One is immediately following the Civil War, and the second one is from women's suffrage, so about 100 years ago, to about when did it all start to fall apart? I would say Bill Clinton. I think Bill Clinton did more to destroy the goodness of America than almost anyone else, because the Republicans have always been evil, scheming, greedy monsters, right? But the Democrats are supposed to be the good guys, and they sort of were for a substantial period of time, always with problems, always with issues. You never get a clean U.S. president. There's no good president. Even FDR put hundreds of thousands of innocent Japanese Americans in concentration camps just because of racism. Even FDR, right? Like the great patriotic war, where America saves Europe in World War II, that's so good. Okay, but the army was segregated, right? Like there's no, or Lyndon Johnson, he gives everyone health care who's over a certain age, which is good, but he also murders 1 million Vietnamese people for no reason. And, Red Scare paranoia. So there's no good, but there were good things done. And I think Bill Clinton put the end to that by basically showing that the entire system is owned by the same people, the same giant companies, the same billionaires own every aspect of the political system. And that means it's really like a society on the verge of apocalypse, in the sense that it's completely dysfunctional. There is nothing within the system that can fix it in any way. It's going to shut down because they won't raise the debt ceiling, which is an artificial crisis that America just manufactures every couple of years to show how incredibly dysfunctional it is. It's a declining political system, and there's no one that can save it. So the question is, do you go down with the ship, or do you help us build a better future where we can, help some of our American friends weather the worst of their self-inflicted wounds, but we don't have to go down with them. We don't have to, we can get off the Titanic, and this is our chance, and this is our only chance.
One metaphor I always toss out. So again, the American system is the Titanic. California is the lifeboat. I know people say that, well, if California leaves, then again, you're basically abandoning the rest of the country, and the rest of the country is going to fall apart into even further elements of racism and police violence and, billionaires running rampant, et cetera, et cetera. I would say that California, by separating itself from the federal system, going its own way, California will become an example that can cause a reverse domino effect where, again, the American system has to try to explain away why California is doing so well in so many sectors, while it is actually falling apart at the same time. And if we do have a good example, which I think we could definitely build here in California, and we have begun to build in many different areas, we can actually showcase to the United States what they should have been doing in the first place. And again, I think that could only happen if we have independence. If we don't have independence, we're basically going to have the same debates, the same politics, the same everything constantly in California and then also in the rest of the United States.
Yeah, and I think the fallacy of thinking that California can abandon America, or that's the dynamic, is that the thing is, America's going to hell in a handbasket with California as a part of it. It's drifting into terrible, violent, racist, hateful politics, with California being completely bound and tied to this sinking anchor that is America. What we have to help people understand is that what California can be is a refuge. It can be a refuge to our LGBTQ siblings. It can be a refuge to people who are oppressed in other parts of America merely because of the color of their skin or their gender or their religion. It can be a safe haven, and we can actually create a space where the hopes and dreams of our people can be realized outside of this grasping dead hand of this dying empire that believes only in oppression and blood.
It was funny. I was on the Downside Up podcast for CNN, and I don't believe it got into the podcast, but they asked, California has so much weight in the Republic. Again, we have the electoral votes. Nancy Pelosi is the speaker. Kamala Harris is the VP. Would we be losing all this influence on the country? And I told them, we don't have influence, really. Again, we only have two senators. They only go so far. Again, Kamala Harris, Pelosi are at the top ranks of the political system. Pelosi's been in the top ranks for forever. We have not seen any kind of great changes throughout the country. And on top of that, we haven't even seen great changes just because we're associated with these people. It's not like, again, they got in and all of a sudden California is really kind of taken off even more so because we have their representation, quote unquote. Pelosi came and fixed the homeless issue in her own district. So how are we supposed to be saying that because she was at the top, ranks, that all of a sudden we have such a grand influence and we're actually helping things? No, we have no influence. We're written off completely. And
unfortunately, the voices California sends to DC are either corrupted before they get there or they're corrupted after. The two California presidents are Nixon and Reagan, and they're both unethical, racist monsters, right? So it's not that there are no bad Californians. It's that America brings out the worst in us. America brings out the worst in everyone, right? Everywhere it goes, it sows chaos and destruction. all the violence in Iraq that happened after America invaded and destroyed it, all the horrors of Afghanistan, that trillions of dollars were spent so that the Taliban could take over again and do everything it was doing before after millions of lives were lost. It's a joke. And if everyone around us wasn't indoctrinated from cradle to grave in pro-American propaganda, we would all just abandon this ludicrous failure. Like, America is a failed experiment, but California can be the seed of change and growth and renewal, the promise that so many people thought about America. And also, our revolution can be the outgrowth of the American Revolution. They wanted to escape kings, so they created an empire ruled by money. We want to escape their empire, so we can create an empire ruled by justice and equity. Like, that is the promise of California. And that's what's so wonderful about a conversation between various communities that creates something that works for everyone, is that it focuses on equity, responsibility, social justice, environmental justice. Like, that's the promise of California, but we cannot do it as long as we are letting our American friends hold us back.
No, and I think that one of the things that you're emphasizing is that there's a chance to actually make real changes here in California. I mean, I would be horrified and disappointed if all we did in California independence was basically turn it over to Newsom and company and basically have the same things happen. I think that would be a tremendous mistake. Granted, it's not the worst outcome possible, because compared to the rest of the country, not as bad, but again, it's an extremely low bar. But if we have an actual California revolution, if we have a chance to, restart, blank slate, have a better system, we can go beyond the politics of just the California Democratic Party.
And when we peacefully liberate California through democratic processes and create this vision, I think your perspective in terms of what you're contributing to the CNP right now, where you're talking about a decentralization of power, I think that's exactly what we need to be talking about. We need communities to make decisions for themselves. We need communities to function. We need communities to build their own dreams, not build the dreams of some mealy-eyed bureaucrats in Sacramento, their dreams from their city, from their community. How do we empower every community in California to create its own future? Because if we can harness that, if we can make people feel invested in their community, in their lives, like they have the power, we will create a more dynamic society. The amazing productive power of California, where we are the 5th largest economy in the world with only 40 million people. We outproduce India with over 1 billion people with our mere 40 million, because we are a dynamic, thoughtful, and creative society. And we are going to make that look like level 1 if we can actually encourage and empower all of our communities.
If you take away even moral judgments, does it make sense to have 40 million people not have proper representation in a much bigger system? Does it make sense to not have the ability for these large communities to actually focus on themselves and not be part of an even larger community that can even pay attention to the major issues that they're dealing with? Does it make sense to provide tax money in certain ways that is going towards corruption and graft? Like, again, all moral judgments aside, we all know money's getting flushed. We all know, again, the country is this big. We need to be able to focus more on the actual issues hitting here at home. I mean, again, we're 40 million people. This is Canada. So to have it part of an even bigger system, and then to have it ignored, and to have it, the political power basically neutered for the 40 million people here in California, it doesn't make any kind of sense. Questions about the history of the United States or foreign policy actions or whatever, if you have like all these, if you're confused about that, you should not be confused about the fact that we're too big. And again, our money's being spent in poor ways and we don't have representation, period.
Right. I mean, essentially, we're Wales to DC's England. And that's ridiculous, right? Like, our economy is probably double the size of Canada's. We've got 10 times bigger population than Canada does. And we have all the political power of some forgotten province. We're just a piggy bank for DC to loot. and they use our money to fund their wars, to fund racist societies in the South that oppress people just based on the color of their skin, overtly, overtly racially class stratified societies. I mean, the capital of Mississippi has not had drinking water for a really long time, and that is on purpose because it's a majority Black city. I mean, America is outrageous, and the idea that we should waste even a single further California dollar on this failed experiment that's just dragging us backwards into the past is absurd. I mean, if women want to have rights, they need to help us build a California that will protect their rights, because the Americans are cannibalizing their rights as quickly as they can. I mean, the idea that Roe versus Wade is no longer the law of the land, that is startling. It passed through the media consciousness as if it was just Scalia was having an affair or something. It's already off the radar screen. And you're talking about every red state has now reduced women to the status of baby incubators. You know, this injustice cannot be allowed to stand, and it cannot be allowed to continue to pollute and hold back California, because we care about every Californian.
And yes, I mean, the Supreme Court is out of control, and we all know it's been stuffed, and again, it's corrupt, and again, it's almost impervious now.
No, absolutely. It's the most conservative court anyone alive today almost has ever seen. I mean, you have to go back, you have to go way back to get this level of conservative court. And it's a reactionary conservative court. So I think you can argue that it's the most conservative court in 100 years because of that. Because something overtly trying to destroy progress is a level of conservatism that borders on far-right risk. And so, I mean, I think we really can't count on America's courts. We can't count on America's political systems, and we can't count on America. And so why are we burning hundreds of millions of dollars of our money every month to prop up this failing empire that is inequitable, harms us, and doesn't care about our values or needs?
Doesn't make any sense on any scale, moral-wise, efficacy-wise, using funds properly-wise. It's simple, again, I wish, Bill Skog was here. Bill Skog is our North Cal chapter coordinator. And again, he has been talking about that you can basically make, stock market options, investments, etc., just by watching what committees are operating and who's on the committee and how the congressperson is actually going to be talking about certain bills. Because they're all making tons of money off of us, and we all know that. Who is the Colorado representative? I think Lori Bobart. Well, again, she's already got a hell of a lot of money, and this is a woman that basically didn't really start that way, and it's been very quick.
Well, I mean, Pelosi is another good example. I mean, these people get hundreds of millions of dollars. Their salary certainly doesn't pay that. Essentially, it seems like it's an insider trading racket, where they know what's going to be done and they trade accordingly. And if you just watch how they trade, it's like corruption is built into the system. Insider trading is built into the system. Martha Stewart was arrested for what Nancy Pelosi does on a weekend.
Yes. I mean, it should be emphasized even more. If you have a soft side about the American Revolution and what was happening there, which again, I do think that was progress in human history, obviously not by the standards of the 21st century, but it definitely was progress to a certain extent. The American Revolution was kicked off because of Parliament being so corrupt and out of control, and so ensuring that there wasn't any proper representation from the colonists. And at the same time, too, the Boston Tea Party, if you look into the history of that was because the East India Company was basically being bailed out by Parliament by giving them a monopoly over tea. So things change so much, but things actually don't change that much. And we're kind of in the same boat. We have a corrupt Parliament, we have no representation, and we're seeing corporate bailouts left and right while people are left on their own.
We have to deal with the arbitrary dictates of distant rulers. We are overtaxed and underrepresented. Everything that made the Americans want to leave the UK should make every Californian want to leave the US. And until we do, our rights will be at risk, our prosperity will be at risk, and our egalitarian society that we strive for but have so far also failed to achieve will remain unachievable. We will remain burned by the hatreds and oppressions of America, as long as we're a part of it.
And I think that's a good way to kind of wrap it up. So I thank you, Theo, for, again, being part of this. And thank you, everyone who's been listening to us, and hope to hear from you all soon. And then we'll be talking even more so about all the issues and parts of the California National Platform that we are believing in.
Thanks, Forbes. And all I have to say is ever stronger, ever more independent, ever more liberated, ever more Californian.
This has been Sean Forbes and Theo Slater of the California National Party. This is the Free the Bear podcast. You can find out more about the California National Party at californianational.party. That's californianational.party.